popular series, Discussions in a Fire Hall. Discussions about fire safety, things that affect you. We want you to be part of this interactive experience, so please type in your questions in the comments box. Even if you just want to say hi, we'd love to hear from you. You know, Toronto Fire responds to literally hundreds of open-air burning calls and complaints. And every time we arrive on scene, we're basically talking to people who are somewhat confused and unsure that the activities they're doing may be unsafe or illegal. So to help clear the air, I've got two of my favorite guys. I got Sam and I've got Carlo, and they've got some information about open air burning that they would like to share with you. So fellas, come on in, sit down, and tell us a little bit about open air burning.
Thank you, Roman.
Thanks, Roach, for that introduction. Okay, good morning. So we all know that open-air burning is a very contentious issue in the city of Toronto right now. And we're going to try to discuss a little, some of the issues involved with open-air burning, what exactly it is. So my first question, Carlo, what is open-air burning?
It's funny you should ask that, because open-air burning ends up being somewhat vague. A lot of people have a lot of different opinions over exactly what it is. Simply put, open-air burning is when you end up lighting a fire outside of a building. Whenever you light something on fire and you're burning it outside of a building, that's considered open-air burning. But there's so many different iterations of that, right? So we have a whole bunch of different examples. You've got a few, right?
Right. Well, open-air burning, there's many examples. Open-air burning can consist of small and large contained fires.
Right.
It can be a chimney.
Right.
It can be a fire pit, a fire bowl, a burn drum, bonfires, outdoor wood fireplaces. Those are all examples of open-air burning.
On the screen, that's a chimney, right?
Yes.
Right.
Right.
So are those permitted?
No, as you can see it's a wood-burning chimney.
Right.
You cannot use a wood-burning chimney. In fact, you can't use any wood-burning recreational items in your backyard.
Oh, okay, cool. But then there's also different types as well. You also end up having those fire pits.
Fire pits?
They're really beautiful. There it is. It's up on the screen.
Right.
Right. So are those permitted?
Those are permitted. We'll discuss that a little bit later.
Okay, good.
About when you can have a fire pit in your backyard or a fire bowl.
Right. So that brings us up to the second part of the question.
Right.
The first question is, what is open air burning? And the second question, which everyone always asks, is, well, when is open air burning permitted?
So in the city of Toronto, you can conduct open air burning with a permit. That permit is only issued by two divisions, Toronto Fire Services or Parks, Forestry and Recreation.
Right.
Those are the only two where you can obtain an open air burning permit. Now, if you want to burn some grass, say Hyde Park or a golf course, they have to obtain a permit. But there are certain situations where you don't need a permit.
Okay.
So if you have a small contained fire, a barbecue used to cook food on a grill, you don't need a permit as long as the size of the grill and the fire
Right.
are in proportion to the amount of food that you cook.
So you don't have a huge bonfire for one weenie.
Right.
Right.
So if Toronto Fire Service get called to a home and they look in the backyard and there's a grill that's 10 feet long and somebody's cooking one little hot dog, that's not in proportion.
Right.
Okay? And the crews will discuss that. The other time that you don't need a permit is if you have, and you mentioned, we showed the picture
Right.
of the propane or natural gas fire bowl or fire pit. You can have that in your backyard as long as it's only used for that purpose. It's not intended for cooking,
Right.
and it's not recommended you cook on it.
Right.
As long as it's natural gas or propane, that's allowed without a permit.
And they're built for that function, right?
Yes.
So that means they have some sort of approval?
Yes. So it has to be certified,
Right.
has to be for outdoor use only, and basically it just has to be assembled and installed and operated following the manufacturer's instructions.
Right, right.
Okay?
So that pretty much covers, about that. But
Right.
so you were mentioning before,
About the permit process. So
Right.
we were discussing when you have to have a permit and the times when you don't have to. So what happens if you want to burn something and you want to apply and get a permit? How does that work?
Okay, well, yeah, we're going to cover the different types of permits. I'm going to speak very briefly about the Parks and Rec. Whenever you go out to a lot of the parks in the city of Toronto, you see these large open-air burning pits. Even though they're there, you just can't go ahead and use them. You have to end up asking for approval to use it. That way there, we know that there's a fire occurring. If there's a lot of smoke and fire, because the permit's in place, Toronto Fire knows that you're having a fire there. That permit is one, to end up making sure it's safe, and two, to end up making sure we don't have any false fire calls. So Parks and Recreation is for any type of park area in the city of Toronto. But for every other type of burn, which we have within the city of Toronto limits, you have to apply to the City of Toronto Community Risk Reduction Department. And the permit application process, there's a fee and there's a form you have to end up filling out. But they're also going to be covering 2 or 3 different things. I'm going to go a little bit more in detail on this. When you apply for your permit, they're going to be asking a few questions. One, where it's going to be occurring, what address, what are you going to be burning, makes sense, when it's going to happen, obviously. But they also want to end up finding a couple of things. I'm going to use my bottle as an example. That's the fire. Now what we want to end up doing is that where this fire is, we want to make sure that the clearance around the fire is far enough away from a building, far enough away from the spectators coming to your event,
Right.
far enough away from any dead vegetation or grass that might be around. We want to make sure that that fire is maintained and contained. We don't want it to get out of hand, right?
Right.
But so we're going to ask for a site plan to show that. The site plan is going to show the location of the fire, adjacent buildings, where the spectators are going to be.
Right.
They're also going to show location of fire hydrants, because we need to know where to connect if we have to put it out. We're also going to end up asking for your methods of extinguishment. Now I'm going to go a little bit more in detail for that. Some people know how to use a fire extinguisher, and if you know how to use a fire extinguisher, then you use it, and you're going to show where you're going to be keeping it on the site plan. But even if you don't have the fire extinguisher, we always end up asking for having a charged water hose.
So when you say about a charged hose line, are we talking about the huge hose lines that we have on our fire trucks, or are you talking about your regular garden hose that most people have?
Yeah, your regular garden hose. The term charged means that it's just pressurized with water. So then when you hit that nozzle, it's ready to go. We don't want to end up having that. If the fire is getting out of control, you have to run back to the house to turn on the water.
Right.
You should have it on and ready. It should be charged. And that should be right next to where the fire is. So in the event if it ends up getting away from you, you have the ability to extinguish it out. And there's also another thing too, which they want to end up making sure when you apply for a permit. It specifically says that you're supposed to have a way to communicate with Toronto Fire. You got to be able to, one, call 911 if it ends up getting out of thing. But also, more importantly, there's 2 other times that you have to call during this fire event.
Right.
You have to call when the fire starts and also when the fire is completed. The reason why we need to know that there's a fire going on. If there's a lot of smoke billowing out and someone else who's just walking down the street sees that and says, oh my God, there's a fire. We don't want to end up having a fire truck coming down when there's an approved fire burn coming on. We're taking away valuable resources from someone else who would need that help.
So they would call the non-emergency number for Toronto Fire Services and let communications know that they're having an open air burning.
Exactly.
And they have a permit.
When you get your permit application, it spells it out in writing. It gives you the number where you have to call at the beginning, at the end. It also specifically says if the fire gets out of control, call 911.
Right.
So that's all covered under the permit thing. And also, your permit application should be on site.
Right.
That's your
So what happens if I get a permit, it's approved, we start to have open air burning, I forgot my permit, it's at the office or my friend's house. What happens if that permit is not on site when someone's conducting open air burning?
Well, it's a very interesting thing. It's very, very similar to when you have a building permit on a house, right? That permit is your approval that you can do that function there at that time.
Right.
When the trucks roll up and they end up seeing that you're having there, you haven't got your permit approved, there's no way of knowing 100% whether you got the approval or not. You may be subject to a fine. The person starting the fire and also the owner of the property as well. So both the individual who's conducting the actual fire event and also the owner of the property may be subject to fine under the fire code.
So I get my permit, everything is great.
Yeah.
I'm conducting open air burning in in my backyard, my property. How do I make sure that everybody is safe once you're conducting an open air burning and there's flames?
Perfect. The other second part of the permit ends up giving you extra details on that. And it's very, very specific, and it goes into a lot of information on that. Number one, it ends up saying that you should call Toronto Fire at the start and end of the burn, because we need to know when it's happening. The reason why is that, again, we don't want to do any unnecessary responses from Toronto for Toronto services. We don't want, we're having a beautiful barbecue, you don't want trucks rolling up. So we wanted to making sure that one, that's there. You also need that phone to call 911 if you have. So one, you're prepared for that. Second, you should also have all your participants away from the fire. So again, I'm using this as an example as the fire. You don't want little kids playing right next to where the fire is. You're not going to set up your buffet table right next to where the fire is, so all the embers and the ashes go on top of the food, or for that matter, the embers that are going on people's clothing and causing inadvertent burns.
Right.
We don't want to do that. Also,
Right.
the heat of the fire might be too much for so many people. Again, we should maintain your method of extinguishment ready. Your fire extinguisher, if you know how to use it, should be there. Your charged water hose, your hose filled with water should be there. And you have to also remember that after the end of the fire event, and everyone's had a great time, you shall extinguish that fire to zero. No smoldering, should be cold, make sure that there's nothing left of that,
And don't forget, once that fire is extinguished,
right?
then you call Toronto Fire Communications and let them
Exactly.
know that you are done. That way, if somebody sees smoke afterwards, that's a real fire response.
Bingo, that's 100%. That's
Right.
exactly it. So that pretty much covers the majority of the stuff. As Roj was saying, this is a live event. Do we have any questions, Roj?
Yeah, actually, we've hit the jackpot with the questions. Very, very good topic. Carl, who's a regular contributor, is asking, I recently purchased a propane-fueled open-top fire pit. Is this permitted, and does this require a permit?
So the question is, yes, it's permitted, and no, it does not require a permit. As I mentioned before, wood-fueled campfires, fire pits, you can't have those in your backyard.
Right.
But if you have a natural gas or propane-fueled fire pit or fire bowl,
Right.
as I mentioned before, as long as it's approved, it's certified for outdoor use, and it's assembled, and it's used how it was intended, what the manufacturer says,
Right.
then you do not require a permit for that to be in your backyard.
That's kind of contrary to those chimenea things, right?
Right, chimneys are not allowed. You cannot have any wood burning in the backyard.
Right. Okay, cool. So that covers that question.
Good,
Second
yeah,
question.
good consumer awareness tip there also. Second question comes from an anonymous contributor. I am throwing a party and plan to have a small bonfire on my neighbor's property, but I have their permission. Is this permitted?
Oh, no wonder he wants to remain anonymous, or she. Bottom line of it is that whenever you're having any type of burning, whether it be on your property or elsewhere, you have to end up getting the permit. The permit is key. Now, if you're going to be doing it on a property that's other than your own property, you have to end up getting the written permission from your neighbor to
Right.
use their property.
Yeah.
Because that way the city knows that they've come into agreement with you burning something. I don't want anyone just showing up on my backyard, setting up a fire in my backyard. So if the city's got to approve that, we want it in writing.
Right, you don't want to be going on vacation and realizing when you came back, somebody decided to have a party in your backyard with a campfire.
Exactly, because that's the reason why. We
Right.
need to end up having them writing to do it. And, key thing, via permit.
Yeah, so permit is key. Sonia is asking, every fall she notices her neighbor is burning raked leaves and branches. She doesn't necessarily see flame, but she does see a fair bit of smoke. Is this okay?
No, it isn't. Actually, we get many, hundreds of calls regarding this open air burning for Toronto Fire Services. And it's very frustrating for crews to show up. And sometimes the homeowner doesn't realize that you are not allowed to burn leaves in your backyard.
Right.
Not only does it annoy your neighbors, smoke goes into their living room, goes into their bedrooms,
Yeah.
but it's illegal in the city of Toronto. And there's some other options that you can do with that. You can compost.
Right.
right? You can go to a big box store and buy the bags. You
Yeah,
can
the
rake
paper bags.
rake the leaves,
Right, yeah.
put the bags in there. But there's also some other safety issues and hazards with burning leaves or burning garbage in your backyard. You can definitely not burn garbage at all, and you can't burn leaves. The reason when you burn leaves, it produces toxins in the air. People don't realize that. And Health Canada has information regarding toxins produced by burning leaves,
Right.
right? So that can be harmful to seniors, to children. And garbage, if you start burning garbage, there's plastics, so it's very toxic. Now, the other thing that people don't realize is when you start burning leaves in the backyard, those embers, what if it's a windy day?
Well,
And those
it-
embers blow
Is there
into
fire next door?
your neighbor. Yeah, your neighbor has some boxes in his backyard. Next thing you know, the backyard's on fire, or their back deck because you were burning leaves. Those embers went next door. So simple answer to that, Woj. No, do not burn leaves.
I like it.
Simple.
Okay. A lot of good information this morning, fellas. Where can people go if they want to get more information about open air burning or any sort of fire safety tips? Where can they go for more?
At toronto.ca/fire is our repository for everything about fire safety. We have a lot of pamphlets that are available there, not only on open air burning, but we also end up having on other fire safety items, fire safety in a high rise, cooking and smoking fire safety, smoke alarm and carbon monoxide fire safety. Carbon monoxides and smoke alarms, I can't repeat this enough. They're the unsung heroes 24/7 that protect our lives every single day. It just needs a working battery, test it every single month, replace the batteries every single year. They're there to save your lives. Check your smoke alarm as if your life depends on it, because the reality is
It does.
it does. That's the thing. So that's pretty much our topic for today. We've had a great time today. Thank you, Woj, for fielding the questions for us. And yeah, you had fun?
I had a great time.
Yeah, great. So join us again next week. We're going to be having other different subjects. I don't know what next week is, but I'm looking forward to it. So come on down and visit us again.
So, Carlo, did we remind everybody where they have to have smoke alarms in their house?
I think it's every floor level
Yeah.
for every smoke alarm,
Yeah. Outside all sleeping areas?
right? And also carbon monoxides outside the sleeping areas.
Outside. Where you sleep in a house, have a carbon monoxide alarm in your house.
Perfect. Thanks again. Have a great day.